This video gives you quick tips to use Phon faster and more accurately. Tip 1. Create your preferred layout and save it. Phon gives you a lot of flexibility in how your session window is laid out, but the default view is pretty bare bones. It gives you the record data showing your transcriptions, the media player for video or audio, session information, as well as the timeline view. However, there are a lot of other features of Phon that are pretty important that you might want to add to your view all the time. To change your view, go to the View option, and you can add individual components here, or you can choose some of the layouts that are set up for certain tasks. All of those are quite useful. I like to set up a view that's pretty comprehensive for my needs and then save it. And this is what I would do. So one important view would be the syllabification and alignment view, and I like to have that just next to the record. And it shows me the syllable structure as well as how the target and actual aligns. Checking color and alignment is also something you might want to do because it's a little bit easier for me to view that here. And you can make adjustments right adjacent to your record as needed. Another view that's pretty helpful is the IPA lookup view. You'll be using this anytime you want to generate automatic transcriptions for the target or the actual. And having that here for easy access is great. You may also want the find and replace function, which allows you to quickly search for things in your entire session. For example, if I want to find S, I can find all the instances of S in the target. Or let's say you want to change something about all of your transcriptions. If you want to replace every S with a Z for some reason in the IPA target, you can do that all at once. So that's a pretty powerful and useful tool. Also note that you can search for things in any tier by using the search bar up here as well. If you are working with any type of audio file, you're likely going to want the speech analysis view. Nothing's displayed here right now, but this is where you're going to see the spectrogram and waveform. The last important one I will add is the session check view. And again, I'm going to put that over here to the right. Session check, make sure there are no transcription errors that Phon can't interpret. It's important to address any of these before you try to do an analysis because Phon will skip records that have a session check error. Now, after you have added whatever windows you would like to your view and set it up the way you like, it even incorporates how large you've set the window to be. You're going to go to View, save current layout, and give it a name like default layout or something. And whenever you want to change to this view, go to Load Layout, and to the user library, click the layout that you've created. Now, Phon remembers what you had open last time, but it's best to have this saved so you can quickly get back to it. Tip number 2 is that you can generate automatic target transcriptions, not just in the IPA target tier, but also in the IPA actual tier. Then instead of creating the actual tier from scratch, you simply just adjust the actual tier to account for any errors in the production. And you can use this tip whether you are transcribing directly from an audio file or transferring your transcriptions into Phon from somewhere else like handwritten transcriptions. And so let me show you how this would work. Here on the right, I have some transcriptions that I did by hand, and I'm just going to enter them into Phon here. So I have already added the orthography for the 10 different items, and that only takes me a moment. And we're going to go to the IPA lookup view. I like to use the legacy English just because of the way it does diphthongs and some other features, but you can choose the type of IPA dictionary that better matches your transcription conventions or your own purposes. After entering the orthography, you can either generate IPA targets individually, or you can auto-transcribe the session, and auto-transcribe the session is the fastest way. Now, what's important here is that instead of just doing the target, we're actually going to do the actual as well. Now, this is going to generate these targets, and you can see that it's exactly the same what's in the target and actual. And of course, we're going to need to change the actual, but this might be a little bit easier. For example, changing blue to blue, like that, is not going to require me to type as much. One important consideration when you are using this method to save you a little bit of time is it's very important that the conventions used in the target match the conventions you're using in the IPA actual. So if I'm not really looking at vowel lengthening, I wasn't really transcribing it if it wasn't an expected context, then I also wouldn't want it in the IPA target. Oo with a lengthening diacritic is different from oo without. So Phon would treat this actually as an error because they're different. So make sure that you are matching the target to whatever way you choose to do your actual transcriptions. And I'll have a tip a little bit later that can streamline that process. So let's keep going, and we have friend here, which was produced by gliding the R. That's a quick adjustment. And with shrank, we have a similar situation. We're going to change that to S, W, and also change the val here. Now this is where we're going to transition directly to our next tip, tip number 3, which is effectively using the IPA map as you transcribe. You can open the IPA map by going to Tools, IPA map, and I'm going to just adjust this a little bit on the screen because at this point we need to use an IPA symbol that's not on the keyboard. So a couple things about this map. You can bring it up with a shortcut, Control M or Command M on a Mac. It stays on the top of the screen. So even if I click here on the session editor, the session editor doesn't go over it. And it remembers where your cursor is and doesn't move it. So I'm going to erase this and start from scratch. We need to use the IPA keyboard to make the stress marker if we want to indicate that. And I've got S, W, and then this vowel needs to be done here, and also the ng and the K typing. So you can see that I typed the symbols that are on the keyboard and I clicked the ones on the IPA map and I didn't have to move my cursor. I could just seamlessly transition between the two. That makes it faster. The IPA map also has some really great features. You can hover over an item to learn more about it, including its features. That's very helpful. You'll also notice that some of these symbols are highlighted. That's because I've used them recently. If that setting is turned off, you can turn it on by right-click on the IPA map and select Highlight Recently Used. This is especially helpful because in a single session, you often are reusing the same symbols, and so it's easier to spot them. If there are certain symbols that you use a lot, you can also favorite them. So for example, if you find you're often using the aspiration symbol, you're going to right-click it, choose Add to Favorites, and it pops up here at the top. Or the symbol for the English R, Add to Favorites. Or let's say the affricate also occurs a lot. Add to favorites, so it's easy to spot them. You can also right-click and scroll to a particular area if you want to go directly to vowels, for instance, or consonants. Oop. You can also use the search function. Let's say you're looking for a symbol and you can't quite find it. So I'm looking for esh. Or sometimes you can even look up the way it's pronounced, esh, is working to give me this symbol, or I want to say dental. And all of these dental sounds, including the dental diacritic, come up. Um, voiceless, right? I get these voiceless symbols as well as all of the different symbols that are voiceless. So that's a very helpful tool to help you navigate the IPA map more effectively. So let's continue here. We've got the production of church. I've got to do that. I can type, then I'm using the IPA map to get the vowel as well as the affricate. Next one, cheese. We have the affricate and the E, and again, we're not using the lengthening diacritic, and I'm going to replace that with cheesy, a similar situation, although I am just going to get rid of these. Now, I'm realizing that I've got a lot of lengthening diacritics that I don't want. So one thing I could do here is use the find and replace function. So I'm going to select the lengthening diacritic. And I know that I don't want them at all because I'm not using them in my transcriptions. So I'm going to look for the lengthening diacritic in the IPA target and the IPA actual. I'm going to wrap so it looks in both directions, and I'm going to replace it with nothing. And now I'm setting it to plain text because I'm not using a query script. Now I can select Find Next and go through each one, or I can just replace them all at one time. And you can see that now all the lengthening diacritics are gone. And I can finish up with train, judge, which is produced correctly, magician. Now this one's a little different. Oh, I need my map again because I closed it. I need the nasalization diacritic. So I could search for it here by looking for it, or again, I can do nasal and it shows up right here. Now that took me a few minutes because I was explaining things along the way, but you could see if I went and did this straight through, that would be a quite quick process. Tip number 4 is that you can import transcriptions directly into Phon. Now there are many reasons that you may want to import a session into Phon. Sometimes you want to enter your transcriptions separately, or you already have them in another typed format. Or you may just want to generate IPA target transcriptions from a bunch of words that are written orthographically. To import a session, we don't need the session editor. We're going to go actually to the project view here, and you go to Tools, Import from CSV. Now, in order to import a file into Phon, it needs to be a comma-separated value file, which is a type of text file that works like a spreadsheet. So you're going to click Import from CSV. The default encoding that Phon wants for these files is UTF-8, which is a pretty common Unicode encoding type. That is because IPA symbols are Unicode. Now you can use other types of file encoding. You just need to know what encoding type your file is and make sure that you've selected the right type. I'm going to show you how to create documents in the UTF-8 encoding type. Now, before we import a file, I'm going to show you how to create the type of document that's needed to import to a Phon session. You need a spreadsheet. You could use Excel, but it's a little complicated due to the encoding. You can use Google Sheets. That allows you to export to the right type of CSV file, as well as programs like LibreOffice or OpenOffice also have that capability. The structure of the spreadsheet that you need to create is pretty simple. You can import something with as little as a single tier of information. So if you wanted to just import orthography, you would create an orthography tier and have the words written along the column. Each line corresponds to a new record in Phon. So here I've entered the orthography for the words from our little word list here. You can also import directly IPA target transcriptions, IPA actual transcriptions. You could import a notes tier. Another useful one is the speaker name, which allows you to specify who the speaker is for all of these utterances, rather than them just being set as unidentified by default. You could also specify the segment. This allows you to import a file that's actually already segmented if for some reason you have that information about where these words are produced in some audio file. But these are a bit more advanced. For the most part, you're going to be using these 3 tiers. And for this first example, we're actually going to import something that's just orthography. So that's all you need, just the column structure is the most important. So I've got this file, I'm going to download it as a comma-separated values file, save as, Now we're just going to put this on the desktop. Sample transcription, save. All right. I've got this file on the desktop, so I'm going to choose the folder where this is located, and that's going to be the desktop. Select the folder. I'm going to choose where I want to save it. I want to save it to my sample corpus. It'll show you all the possible files that could be imported, and you select which ones. So you can actually import a lot of files at one time if that's helpful to you. Next. Now I haven't set any participants, and that's fine with me. Now you can see that I'm only importing orthography. Once you can click close, you're done. Now let's open up this session that I've created. And you can see it's got the orthography already filled out for me. And because I didn't specify a speaker, it says unidentified. Now I can use the same process we did before and generate the IPA target automatically, rather quickly, just like this. Now let's see what it looks like. I'll close this. Now let's see what it looks like if we add more information. So another reason you might want to import a session is if it's more convenient or faster for you to transcribe the IPA outside of Phon. And for me, that's the case because I have a program which changes my keystrokes to IPA symbols. So I'm going to add the IPA actual only because the IPA target can be generated easily in Phon. So let's pull up once again our transcriptions, and I'm going to turn on my IPA tool, and I'm going to transcribe. All right, and I'm done. So for me, that's a little bit faster than using the IPA map in Phon. We'll do the same process. Download a comma-separated values file. Save it to my desktop. I'm going to save over the old file. Sample transcriptions. Tools, import from CSV. Make sure I select the desktop, which is where I saved it. I'm going to add this to, oh, see, my IPA keyboard is still on. There we go. Next. Now, it's important here to check that Phon recognizes this is an IP actual tier, and it's going to use an English labifier. If you're transcribing a different language, you are going to want to set the syllable structure for the language that you would like Phon to use. That's done. Let's check it out. And you can see that my IPA actual is here in Phon. Now, I didn't create the IPA target because I can actually create that pretty easily by filling in the IPA target automatically. Tip number 5 is that you can create templates in Phon to streamline the process of creating a new Phon session. Now, this tip is mostly useful when you find yourself creating the same type of session over and over again. For example, if you administer a particular probe many times, it would be helpful to create a template for it. An example would be having a probe for the Goldman-Fristow test of articulation if you like to use the words produced from that test as a speech sample. I have templates for the Goldman-Fristow as well as many other independent, larger, more thorough probes that I like to use. Now, these templates can be created directly in Phon, just the way that you would create any session. You would create a record for each of the words in the probe by writing the orthography, generating the target. You would not have the actual transcription like that. You could have it be copied from the target to make it so that you just adjust this, or you could leave it blank if you would rather type in the actual completely yourself. Once you've created all of the records that correspond to the words in the probe, you can save it like you would any session and take this template that you've created and then copy it whenever you'd like to use it. First, let's look at how you can create these templates by importing them into Phon. Here I'm showing you a template for the Little Peep, a probe created by Dr. Jessica Barlow. You can create a template in the same way you would import any other session. So here I just have all of the IPA targets and IPA actuals filled out equivalently with what my target would be. And so what's especially nice about a template is I've already gone through and adjusted these transcriptions so they fit my general transcription conventions. The problem with generating targets in Phon is that they might not match what you would prefer to use as a target. So this allows you to tweak it just one time for all of these words, and after that, you can use it again and again without having to adjust them one at a time. So once I've created this, I can import it using the same procedures we've seen before, and we'll end up with something just like this. Now, here you can see where I have imported a number of different templates that I like to use. If we wanted to import a Little Peep template, I would just take the template and click and drag it wherever I would like a new session to be. And now it's no longer, this copy is no longer a template, so I'm going to name it something like this. And we have a template ready to go, and that saves us a whole bunch of time when we're transcribing the same probe repeatedly.